of evolutionary psychology. We're going to talk about individual differences because this is an individual differences class. I mean, we're primarily focusing on personality, but as a differential quantitative psychologist, I clearly have many hats. But yeah, so that's where we're going today. And we only got a handful of slides to get through. And then we're done with this module. And I think this is the last one before the test. So, good luck. Okay, so, individual differences. Yeah, I just said that. Anyway, so, a lot of the focus in evolutionary psych is about, general human nature and kind of general human behaviors that are typical. So more classic social psychology rather than personality psychology. And so you may be asking, why the hell did we even have a unit on this? It's about people being the same for the most part, except for that sociosexuality stuff that seemed like shoehorned in. Well, here's where the diversity comes in. It's necessary for viability. Ugh, wow. This is art, clearly. There we go. Oh, that's wonderful. Why have I never done this before? I just pulled it down so that the camera is... Yeah, no, my life just got way easier. Because now I have the text, my script start below the camera instead of above it. So I have to do this. Only 2/3 of the way through the course for me to figure that one out. Anyway, let's get back from my aside. So diversity is necessary for viability. Different traits and behaviors are adaptive in different situations. For example, like neuroticism and anxiety, both are... So neuroticism and that anxiety in a dangerous situation is pretty helpful. The examples I tend to use are a bear and a cave. So yeah, let's go with those in the like stereotypical caveman days. But yeah, so in caveman days, you hear a little like crackle outside, maybe a branch break, wind being super spooky because that's what wind does. So if you are higher on levels of negative emotion and anxiety, you may think, oh God, that could be a bear. I should go like prepare myself, so you like go and get your bear beast weapon thing or your guard cat, and then you go like investigate. So, or maybe even don't investigate, you just wait and hope, but like are prepared. So if the bear comes in the cave, you're ready for it. Now on the flip side, if you didn't prepare and the bear comes in, you dead, and there goes your genetic line, done, toast, because you didn't bother to get your bear stick ready. So there, neuroticism advantageous. However, if you're in like a safe situation, or also like if there is no bear, well, it doesn't eat you, so it didn't matter. Maybe but now that we are in less than caveman times, that scary monster under your bed is probably going to cause the kid higher on neuroticism to not sleep so hot because of that scary monster, versus the kid with lower levels of state anxiety not freaking out about the monster that's living under there because they know the monster's just chilling. So they get a better night's sleep and just have a kind of chiller, happier, less stressed existence. So that kid that gets better sleep probably does a little better in school, stuff like that. But if they heard that same like spookiness and they were in prehistoric caveman days, which I know is like I'm making an extreme case here, but like they'd be dead because that bear just ate them. Yeah. All right. So that's one example with neuroticism. Now another one with like openness. So openness to experience is kind of a mixed bag. Like people with higher levels of openness are more willing to try new things, types of exercise, stuff like that. So they're more likely to be physically fit just because they try stuff and eventually they might like it. Like you don't know if you hate rock climbing until you try it. And so you may discover you don't hate it so much. So then you do it and then you're more physically fit. But also, you're way more into trying drugs. And Nancy Reagan, who I will see if I can get like an overlay, says just say no to drugs. Now, openness to experience, there are more and less dangerous drugs, regardless of whatever you want with the gateway hypothesis. If you're doing heroin, you're gonna have a bad time. And people, like, you're not gonna be as appealing of a mate. Because you don't have your shit together. Now, other drugs, I'm not gonna go into it. But openness to experience, not always good. And so, like, it can depend on the environment, or just culture, norms, stuff like that. So, why are we accounting for these? So those behavioral patterns, while have evolved as reactions to particular environmental experiences, so like our adaptive behaviors, our evolutionary ingrained stuff hasn't caught up with the scary monsters under the bed. They're still in the cave watching out for the bear. And so environmental experiences drive this a lot, and so different environments will result in different behavioral patterns, so traits. So this could be some of the reason why we have regional differences. But that's less of the point than so these behaviors may be frequency dependent. They may be adjusted based on how adaptive it is. So like if it can be really beneficial to be a slacker in a group if everybody else has their shit together. So if you are like the one bum, then it's really adaptive for you to let everybody else do the work. But if everybody's a slacker in your group, your grade is gonna go to shit because nobody did anything. So that's kind of one current example about how behaviors can be adaptive as long as only a few people do it. The examples in the book are like psychopaths and con artists, but I think a more relevant example is like shirking or loafing or being lazy. Like if everybody's lazy, it doesn't get done. But if only you are lazy, it'll still get done, and then you didn't have to do any work. Which is one reason why group projects are so awful. So, yeah. But, so several patterns can evolve based on these strategies. Some behaviors may be frequency dependent. And I guess the key like piece I want to emphasize here is that human nature is flexible. This undermines the idea of evolution. Not really, but that's what I have in my script here. Human nature is flexible, and this flexibility undermines the idea of evolution, which makes evolutionary theory controversial. I think there are other things that make it controversial. But that's kind of the key takeaway I think the Funder's approach uses in the book. But yeah, and so like for most individual differences, like mild extremes are adaptive. But like what happens is when you get like to super extremes, so if you look at like neuroticism in mild levels, is super helpful in detecting that bear. But at higher and higher levels of anxiety, you get into the point where it's pathological and like crippling to your life and your health and well-being. That's not adaptive. But that's what happens when you have individual differences, and we mate, and those distributions vary over time. And so the tails tend to be like, so when you get beyond what's adaptive, like that's usually in the tails. And we'll cover this in kind of the physical and mental health, because it really illustrates this nicely. But like moderate extremes, beneficial, like being conscientious. Up until a point, it's really great, especially if you're in a group where everybody else is a slacker, because at least you will get it done. But if you get into really extreme levels of conscientiousness, like you're in like obsessive compulsive disorder levels, where like everybody has to follow the rules, and if anybody violates those rules, ooh. So, not to disparage people with this disorder. My point is that adaptive behaviors can become less adaptive. Like, it's not always more is better. It's not the case that more conscientiousness is better all the time. Because, and that's what I'm trying to highlight here. But back to this, like, human flexibility making stuff controversial. That's not it. It's more, people don't, well, the whole, like, religion thing, but also that whole eugenics thing. And I know I talked about it a smidge in the behavior genetics unit, but beyond just the behavior genetics unit, like, so that's kind of the reason why the BG unit and the evolutionary psych unit, like, kind of live together, because if you take the extreme, interpretations of evolutionary theory and apply it to people, as well as take this idea that anything genetic, like, you can breed through, and that's not how it works, but those two together are why both behavior genetics and evolutionary theory are controversial beyond that whole religion thing. Because it can be misused really badly. Like, really badly. So, yeah. Okay, cool. I just had a sanity check. I checked to make sure my microphone was actually working. Okay, but yeah, so there's controversy here. I try and make sure to cover it, but it boils down to, like, that religion stuff, which I'm not going to touch, because I don't want to, and, misappropriating this theory to control people and stop them from breeding, because it improves the fitness of the species, which is nuts, okay? Just to clarify, that idea is nuts. Eugenics, applying evolutionary psych to eugenics, okay? I hope that, so, like, don't misread me here. Like, it can be misused horribly. Okay, next time, I am gonna talk about the critiques of the evolutionary psychology approach. Initially, and you'll notice the jump cuts a little, this was one mega lecture at clocking in at 36 minutes. And so here's probably the only place I could cut it. So I apologize for the abrupt jump, as well as the cat chaos that's running around. But also, it's, my choices were cut it here or give you a 40-minute lecture. So I figured you much would prefer, like, this is the only logical break in this chunk. So yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. Thanks for enduring this kind of abrupt transition. Bye-bye. Cool. I'm gonna transition now. Ooh.